before I get started on the next part, I'd like to ask a quick show of hands. So how many of you are actually developers, software developers? Okay. And so how many of you are actually familiar with PHP? And Java? Okay. And Objective-C? Okay, cool. Thank you. And another set of questions. So who's using an iPhone here? Okay. And Android? Wow, okay, I think Android wins. All right, so the next part, I wanted to talk about Kurogo. Okay. So Kurogo is the open source, mobile optimized middleware. And in the previous session, I talked about some of the challenges that the enterprise and university developers are faced with, especially when dealing with the back-end data, not to mention the mobile. And so the question to us was, how can we make it easier for the developers and for the universities and the enterprise customers to leverage the nature of Kurogo to help create these solutions. So what we offer for the Kurogo is that what you can get is a mobile web right away. You can get a mobile web that was very similar in features, the functionality, as what you might find in other universities, very fast, very quickly. You don't even have to go out and buy all these devices to test out all these things because it's already there. It's already done. And so that was one of the goals. And if you want something very similar to the native app, and when I say very similar in this case, because what we're offering is real native app, by changing the logos and colors, and if you're happy with that, then you can get the native apps really fast as well. Now, there are things that we're not good yet at. So things like if you create a custom module or custom solution, we can do that fairly quickly for the mobile web, but on the native side, we still have to do some more work. But we'll get to the roadmap of Kurogo a little bit later. So to go back to the history of this, again, it's a fork of the MIT mobile framework that myself and some of the core founding team at Mobile Labs have worked on since 2007. The Kurogo specifically was developed in collaboration with other universities. So not just us coming out of MIT, but also Harvard was a major contributor. University of Central Florida was another one. And you have others like Middlebury College up in, I think it's up in Vermont. It could be wrong. Actually, no, it's Vermont, right? And I blame my jet lag for this. And then you have other universities out there that are making the contributions. It's available as it's a license, it's MIT license. It's very permissive. So you can actually take the code and do whatever you want to do with it. And that means you can modify it any way you want. And of course, you can repackage it and then you can do other things. 1.0 was released in April 2011. So it's about 6-7 months now. And 1.3 was released in October. So we actually are now following about a quarterly release cycle for the point releases. And the current solutions that is coming out of the box are really designed for the mobile campus for university, as well as some of the features of the mobile enterprise. Now, I do have to note that because we are a for-profit business, not a research organization, we do actually also have a venture capital investment into mobile apps. And people ask me all the time, how do you make money? And so as the CEO and as a co-founder, I have to answer the question of how we make the money to the investors and so forth, especially when we have an MIT license, right? And it's almost like you're doing all these stuff and people can just take it and do whatever they want, that's fine. So from our perspective, the enterprise side is where we also make the money. and we sort of license some of the proprietary features and modules, and then of course other ancillary services that we can provide to the both the university and the enterprise. So that's sort of what's there. So to say it slightly differently, when we go out and try to market this mobile optimized middleware, people are like, what is that? Why do I want this? But if you market it as mobile campus solution or mobile enterprise solution, it's very easy for people to understand. So that's kind of what we are doing with Kurogo. And of course, there could be other types of solutions too, not just campus solution or enterprise solution, but you could actually target individual users out there using Kurogo. You could target small to medium-sized businesses, or you could target hospitals. You could target other types of industries where the mobile solution is necessary. And again, powered by Kurogo, so that they can take advantage of some of the core features, and of course the community of developers. And when we say optimized, mobile optimized, part of what we are saying is that it's about creating a good user experience for different types of mobile devices. And we do that by using templates. So templates for what we consider the compliance branch, whether it's the iPhone or an Android or some of the later devices that are out there that support the full HTML and the JavaScript capabilities, so that's one side. You still have to worry about BlackBerry, at least in the US market. Maybe in some other markets where BlackBerries are still very popular. So BlackBerry gets its own set of templates. And I think it's increasingly becoming less popular, but still got feature phone users. When I was actually visiting China, people asked, well, we have so many people with these Nokia phones, and the Nokia phones running probably Symbian, at 60 or the former version of a feature phone Symbian. And they need to be able to still get the information. And I was actually quite happy to say that, when they tried out m.mi.edu from their Symbian phone from Nokia or something, it worked really fast, even from China. So there's a lot of good stuff that's actually in the mobile optimization that goes into Kurogo. Another mobile optimization is really about how we provide the user interface for specific features. So this is an example of creating a federated search as a feature of Kurogo. And the search basically allows you to search many different data that Kurogo is connected to, and doing so in an asynchronous manner. So that you can, search and then still interact with the search results as they come, from the server. So this is actually the Harvard's mobile native app, and then there's a mobile web version of this as well. And you can search for a name of a professor in this case. And he's quite famous these days. He's actually teaching the introductory economics class at Harvard. And there is a recent event happening around the world, Occupy Wall Street, or there's Occupy Harvard. So right now there are tents in the Harvard yard. And apparently this particular professor, he didn't initiate it, but his students didn't sort of thought that they were not being taught they were being taught the old way of looking at the economics. But I'm not really privy to any of those politics per se, but certainly you can look up his name, and then you can now find information about him from a directory. You can find the information about him on the news. You can find information about him from the events data, and all doing so in a single search from a federated search. Another item is making it so that it's glanceable and actionable. So we're getting into now the sort of deeper territory of the user experience and the user interface, not necessarily about the development on the back end, but I think in the mobile, what's really, really important is to be able to provide great user experience. And when you look at some of the applications out there, again, that's because consumers are using great applications on a day-to-day basis. And then they go and look at the university app or their company's internal application, and then they go, what is this? This thing sucks. So we don't want that. We want the end users to think that mobile is awesome. And we want the universities, we want the enterprises to provide that awesome user experience. And Kurogo, it will continue to basically provide that level of user experience. Having the ability to do a cross-module feature. So example is all the way on the left-hand side. This is actually Harvard's course info module. So from there, you find the professor's information. You click on that or tap on that using your finger, and then it provides you with the info from the directory, LDAP, which is a different data source. And then from there, you search the Harvard's map, and then that gets you to the computer center, which is actually located on the map. Now, something like this should be trivial, but it's not. In many cases, it's very difficult to actually make this happen for a number of reasons. Number one, of course, is that the data, even they're coming from different sources. The course info has a data of somebody in a different format, or maybe it's it's not the correct one, or it's slightly different. LDAP server could actually have a slightly different thing, and sometimes the address does not match anything that's in the map data. So you got different data sources, and then how do you actually tie in the user experience? Because otherwise, what happens is that if I tap on the map, and it says not found, not found. And if that happens 2 out of 10 times, the user is not happy. If that happens 5 out of 10 times, users are really not happy. So how do you, from a platform perspective, allow the developers to program this so that if the address is not found, don't even make it tappable. Okay? If so you actually do a lot of background work using the middleware to make sure that the data are valid. And of course, you still have to go back and negotiate with whoever owns the data so that they can clean it up. But at least from a platform perspective, from our perspective, it was important for us to deliver that user. So people ask all the time, so why are you going with open source, and especially with a very permissive license? And my personal goal is to hopefully see thousands of universities around the world using this, or thousands of companies around the world using this. And yes, in many cases for free, and that's okay. But hopefully, we can also get the community going so that it's actually more rapid development. How many people can we hire today and expect to actually tackle all these challenges? If we were to go that proprietary route, we know that our options are very limited. But with the open source community, we know that the developers can actually participate and keep improving the product and so forth. So that's actually something that we are hoping that it will continue. Definitely less bugs. Every software has bugs, and I don't care who makes it. I don't care, what kind of brilliant people are making it, or what kind of big companies are making it. Every software has bugs, and of course, this is another way for us to actually leverage the community to report bugs, fix bugs, and then create a better software. More secure. So I think some people have this idea that open source is not secure. Well, I would argue on the contrary. This exposes us to more users who can say, okay, you know what, we found a security hole. Versus a proprietary software, which actually you have no idea if there's a security bug or not. So this kind of opens us with more opportunities to actually be more responsive to the community reporting back. Of course, the freedom is actually a very, very important part. So when I was still at MIT, a lot of vendors came to us and said, well, maybe you can try our solution and so on. And many of the proprietary solutions, essentially, we could not modify. We could not make it better. And we had to wait for them to make it better and so on. So the idea of us getting tied to somebody that actually may or may not make that particular feature for us. That certainly was a big issue. And the other exciting thing for me is to be able to collaborate, to actually get all these ideas, and to be able to collaborate and help each other. So one university might say, well, so what features does the other one support and so forth. The whole active community actually working together, I think it's really helpful. Now, having said all the idealistic things, but in practice, there's a percentage of people who contribute. There's a percentage of people who actually collaborate. But of course, as we try to make the community stronger, we think we can influence that. Then there's also language barriers too. So I noticed that a lot of the Asian universities didn't join that other community because it's all in English. So it's hard for the Asian folks to communicate in English, perhaps with the Europeans or the North American universities, and also the time difference and all the other stuff. But ultimately, I think there's an opportunity to really leverage the open source and do that locally within Taiwan. Maybe you guys can, somebody could actually create a Kurogo developer group and have some meetings and then collaborate on solutions and still using the basis of the Kurogo's open core. I think that would be a great opportunity. So in the first 6 months, since we released the version, we noticed that there's about 2,000 plus servers using our device detection service. So we don't know precisely how many of the Kurogo installations are out there, but so that's actually one thing that we know. 500 plus Kurogo servers using our version tracking service, so there's a lot of that. And for our surprise, actually a lot of universities are now installing and developing on top of Kurogo, so that's actually pretty good. And enterprise adoption actually has been going as well, although we are really going to, for this year, we've been focused on the university side. So to get into more of a technical detail from now on, so the way that Kurogo is architected is essentially similar to the original MIT design, but the difference is that it's been architected to be a product. It's a product that other people can actually use and set it up very quickly. So on the server side, you have the modules. So Kurogo is really driven by modules. So you have directory module, you have a news module, you have calendar module, you have a map module, the video module, and so on and so forth. And there's actually a lot more modules listed under Kurogo today than this diagram. But each module then can connect to data sources in the backend. Now those data sources, sometimes it's just one, or sometimes it could be two, sometimes it could be three. And actually there's another thing this diagram doesn't do good, which is you can mash up content. But to take an example of a people directory, so you can actually connect to an LDAP server, and of course you can also do Microsoft Active Directory server. So depending on what people are using, you can do that. You can also connect to a database, and you can connect to other types of things that actually store directory. The news, you can do obviously RSS feeds, also WordPress plugins. There's already there, and then calendar actually does all these things. So on the backend side, we are providing more and more modules, more and more plugins, more and more things that are actually driven by the community. On the front-end side, we have the mobile web. So that's sort of the basis of Kurogo. So it starts with mobile web. And we are providing templates for different types of devices, and I'll actually show you the demo a little bit later. And then on the native app side, there is the web service / REST API that you can actually connect to a real native app shell. So you actually have the native apps for the iOS and Android that you can actually build and go with the specifics that are actually going to communicate back and forth with the Kurogo middleware server. So that's sort of the general architecture, and then you can actually create your own custom modules. So the approach that we took is essentially it's a PHP on the server side that can adapt different types of data sources. we're using Smarty rendering engine for the mobile web. And for the iPhone and Android today, it's all strictly native. So again, Objective-C code and an Xcode project for the iPhone and iPad. Then for the Android, it's essentially a Eclipse, I guess it's technically Android SDK Java project that you can actually run out of Eclipse. So, and then we're currently working on the hybrid option that actually will allow a custom module created from mobile web to very quickly become a native app. And then, cross-referencing from different modules to one another. That's sort of the approach. So you got data sources, and you have a module server logic, and then that outputs to either the native or the mobile web. And the way that we sort of architected it is in such a way that we're providing the services for people to very quickly get things up and running. Right? So that's part of our strategy for making it more adaptable. But then, of course, you can extend and customize, and then you can even extend and create lots and lots of new stuff on top of that. So let me actually just show you what it actually looks like. I'm going to start off with this particular demo here. This is m.harvard.edu. For those of you with a mobile device, you can actually go and visit this. So this one actually, as you can see, it's at the info here. And so this is the Harvard version. Here's the University of Vermont. This is actually done by a student over the summer. And actually that's the really cool thing about the open source in Kurogo, which is the students can take the initiative and actually build something for their school. This is University of North Carolina. They actually, they were the first of that, one of the first adopters of the MIT's original code, and then they switched over to Kurogo, and they just fell in love with it. This is actually Rice University. They're not using Kurogo, they're using the original MIT code base. But I wanted to show that there are obviously other open source versions out there. West Virginia also has their own fork, but so we can definitely compare and contrast. Brown University, they're using Kurogo. And in fact, one of the modules here, actually the radio module that you don't see here, but if you go to the real thing, it's there. That's actually done by students. UCF, University of Central Florida, that's actually also Kurogo. They were one of the first to make a lot of good contributions. So we're grateful for UCF left team there. And so what you actually get is that you get this. So you get, and imagine that this is actually your mobile device. And in the example of Harvard, so let's say I can actually look up so somebody that we actually work with, Carrie, she's the Chief Digital Officer at Harvard. And in this example, what I just did was I did this federated search. So there's a directory here, the results from the people directory, there's a map, the courses, and then there's news. So obviously it's returning multiple results. And but let's say I actually click on that, and I get to the data that actually is coming out of the Harvard's LDAP server. And from here, the office address says Office of News and Public Affairs, Holyoke Center 1035, 1350. If you put this into the Google Map search, it's gonna not give you anything useful. So how do you then translate this so that it actually gives you that, which will return in the location using Harvard's own map service. There you go. So this is actually the Holyoke Center, and then what we're using is not the Google Map tiles, but Harvard's own ArcGIS outputted map tiles, and having the ability to actually use your fingers to do the pinching and zooming and dragging and planning and so forth. And if I were at the university now, if I click on that button, it will show me my location in blue. So taking advantage of the location-based services from a mobile web perspective in this case. And so for those of you with an iPhone, you can actually try this out on the iPhone as well for the, for the native app. And you'll actually see the experience being much faster, of course, because it's the native app. Now on the iPad, essentially from the same code base, let me see if I can get to the now you can do the same thing from an Android's Honeycomb device, or even the former, the older version of the Android tablets. And the idea behind this is that now Kurogo recognizes, or the Harvard mobile server in this case recognizes the type of device that I'm coming from, and then now it sees me as an iPad. So now on the iPad version, I have the navigation here on the bottom, and I have the news module here. So if I click on that, the news module's user interface looks different. Now if I flip the iPhone to the right, it actually does that. So it recognizes the rotation of the screen or the screen orientation, and then now it puts the user interface on the side. And it still gets the story from the Harvard news office, but that's what you get. If you actually want to look at the multimedia, and it actually uses a similar interface, and that's what you get. So let's go to UVM and edu. Again, a student named Eats actually worked on this over the summer. He's actually now interning at Modo Labs. It's another great thing about open source is that you can actually work together with many people from all over the place. So this, again, it looks very similar to what Harvard had in this example, except of course the colors and the theme is a little different, and they were able to make additional improvements on this. But wouldn't it be great for some other university to totally take advantage of what's already out there? This is already out there in the open source. And there's no reason why they shouldn't do this. So they should just do it, and everybody should be doing this. And so that's actually what you get out of the Harvard. Now there are many modules here, and we're also working on many new ones. So the more recent one is the social module. So now you can check out some of the relevant Facebook feeds and Twitter feeds and YouTube. And you can probably imagine that we actually recently worked on a Google Plus plugin. So you could actually add more features to this sort of thing. And it's a constant ongoing thing. It doesn't stop, because once you stop with that, you have to keep going. And again, that's where we really see the benefit from the open source community coming in, so that you could actually add more things. So if we're going to be more recently, I think we're going to be working with a university out in China. Well, in China, YouTube doesn't work, Facebook doesn't work, Twitter doesn't work. All of that stuff, irrelevant. Well, again, getting the contributions from perhaps the Chinese developers, and having the ability to actually plug into the Chinese version of, and apologies, I don't know exactly what versions are, but the Facebook equivalent or the YouTube equivalent or the Twitter equivalent. That would be sort of the idea behind it. So this could actually happen all over the world. So that's sort of the mobile web example. And we go back and now demo something here on how you actually set this up. So for those of you with access to your notebook computer and so on, I would encourage you to go to this website called d.modolabs.com. And this is something that we set up recently back in October. Number one, to make it really easy for somebody to set up a mobile web presence for university in less than 15 minutes. But of course, it's not about how fast you can do it. It's, we're not going to win any contest there. I mean, you can do it in 1 minute. I mean, who cares? It needs to be good, right? And it needs to actually provide a lot of value. But the key point here was that we wanted people to at least try it out. And if they want, launch it. So this is hosted on a cloud, if you will, cloud service that actually you can just quickly sign up. And what do you get? So what you get is out of the box, and I actually recently created something. And I think you can also browse this as well. Actually, this does require authentication, so you probably won't be able to browse it. But so this is what I get out of the box. So in Kurogo, we are providing a template, an example, if you will, called Universitas. And in this example, I put up a Modo Labs icon there, instead of another university. But you can replace that, and then now you can go in and configure. So what can I do? What did I do to actually make that? So I just had to fill out a one-page form, and to get to that. So I had the site name, and I picked a theme. I think it's a green/brown theme that I selected. And then I can upload a logo file. And then I name the organization, and I put in the directory. Now, by default, we put the LDAP that I might tell you, but if you're at one of these universities here, you could actually look up, so maybe Carnegie Mellon, Colgate, let's see what they have. So you can get the address of the Colgate University LDAP server, and you can put it there. And you can sort of modify that newsfeed. So just go to any news website. At the very bottom, you always have the RSS feed address. Put it there, and you can try that. A video feed. In this example, we're just doing the YouTube, but you can actually just find the university's the YouTube channel. So you can actually get that, or you can put in the tags. So if you're specifically interested in a certain topic, you can put that. And then you hit the finish button, and then you get, then you basically end up with, something like that. Okay, so that's what I get. So, so that's basically set up on the cloud, and the idea here is that we wanted sort of an average person to be able to do this, and at least then tell other people and publish the URL. Unfortunately, that's going to have d.modolab.com/xyz, but then you can convert that from that to m.xyz.edu or m.something.com, and of course that process should be fairly straightforward. But that's too easy. Right? And that doesn't include a lot of new features. So then you can go to the advanced version. So here in this example, so I have the site construction, and this exposes right now what's sort of the behind the scene, which is the web-based admin interface available to the Kurogo developers. So for those of you who are extremely familiar with PHP and everything about LAMP and everything about to the data integration, you don't need to use this tool. But it's nice to use the tool to just get something set up very quickly. And then you can go into the code, and then you can play with the code. So in this example, what we are doing is that this is sort of a more detailed view, more advanced view of the site setup, and where I can actually do things like pick authentication schemes. So let's say I'm going to add. Actually, let me do it from a different one. Oh, I think I have it on the other. Apologies here, but find that real quick. Okay, well, this might just have to do it. So this is actually running Kurogo 1.3. This is on my local machine, but you'll get the idea. So if I go to authentication, and first I enable authentication, and then I save, and then I add the authentication authorities. So let's say my university or my company is using one of these authentication types. There's an Active Directory authentication, there's a CAS authentication, database authentication, Facebook authentication, Google Apps authentication using OAuth, there's Google authentication, LDAP, password, Twitter, and you can add more and more and more. So again, out of the box, you don't have to do that work because it's already done. And that's again the power of the open source, so you can actually keep adding. And in fact, the CAS authentication, I think it was a contribution from Middlebury College, was actually using the CAS authentication. So then you can actually go into the module configuration. Now here again, a very easy to use user interface that lets you actually control the home screen layout. So you can basically drag and drop. So let's say I want the emergency to go up at the top, and then I hit the save. Then the mobile web version at least gets changed just like that. And the thing that I talked to you about, the video, so I showed you the easy version of the video. So this is a little bit more advanced version of the video, where I just need to go in here, and then now I select. In this case, we so far have 3 different plugins to the 3 different video sources. One is YouTube, another one is Vimeo, another one is Brightcode. So the idea behind this is that you can actually do another one. I forget the one in China. Is it YouTube? Right. So suppose you actually create a YouTube plugin, or you plug into Kultura is another one in the U.S. that we're working with. So you could do that. So and then let's look at the map. So on the map, the default Kurogo gives you the option of looking at different types of map data. So this is actually an example here, a New York map. And then there's Boston maps. But the New York maps, you could actually select the controller with the standing map class. There's a Google option, there's the ArcGIS option, and there's the WMS option. And you could add more map functions. So Korea Telecom has their own Korea Telecom map service. So they recently built something to actually plug in directly to their thing so that they don't have to use Google Maps. So not everybody has to use, what's built in. You can always customize and create those plugins. So that's basically what you would get, again, out of the box. And this is currently being on my local machine. And what I have right now is, I don't know what the equivalent is. I guess in the Windows world, there's, I forget the exact name, but it's kind of similar to this. You have essentially a LAMP stack sitting inside your machine, and of course in the Linux it's actually there. But the idea behind this is that then I can install this, and I can point to the Kurogo server file in my machine, and then from there I can then spin up the admin user interface and go from there. And that's before you do any coding. So without doing any coding, you can get something up and running. And then you can then start doing your coding. So there's actually a lot more details, of course, documentation and help available. First, I would point you to the Kurogo.org, and that actually has some general information. And then there's documentation for the Kurogo.org/docs for different things that we have released publicly. And then we're using GitHub. So how many of you actually have used GitHub? Okay. So it's actually one of the more recent ways, I think, before people were using SourceForge and SVN and stuff like that. But I think GitHub is supposed to be the new Facebook of programming. So more social programming. There are some good things and not so good things about GitHub too, and some limitations. But I think there's sort of a new trend. and it's a lot easier for us to actually interact with developers using GitHub. So you can actually download the repos are available, both private and public, of course, and you can actually take a look at some of the projects that we are working on. But you can also look at some of the university's own projects. So like Harvard released open source their alumni thing. So that actually has a lot of great features available that may or may not be available on Kurogo. I mean, I think we will try to integrate a lot more of those things. But there might be some things that you're looking for today that's not in Kurogo right now. That might make it into Kurogo 3 months from now, but you want to do something now. You're using the Foursquare APIs or wherever else. Then you have the opportunity to actually look at what's out there using GitHub. Kurogo Dev, we actually have a Google group set up, so you can actually go and join that and email any questions to the open community. We try to respond to our non-paying customers as well as paying customers, of course. But we're trying to sort of grow that community, and we're seeing a lot of non-mobile apps people answering a lot of those great questions. So I think that's I'm personally grateful for that. And of course, we do offer the commercial support for some of the customers who are willing to pay for the help. So now getting into a little bit more technical stuff. Basically, this is sort of system requirements. Now this is all available on the documentation, so I'm not going to go into too much in depth. But you can run Kurogo on site, on premise, or in a cloud. And if you were to do it on site, you can actually do it on an Apache server, or you can actually have a Windows with the IIS. So for some of those enterprise customers who are using the Windows server as their primary thing, they can certainly do that as well. It requires a PHP 5.2 or higher, but 5.3 is recommended. And there's a bunch of extensions that you would need to install to really take full advantage of all the different features. And then on the native app side, as I mentioned earlier, there's the iOS that requires Xcode, so you still have to sign up for the developer account with Apple. You still have to download the iPhone SDK or iOS SDK, all the tools, and basically then you can get the Kurogo project file, and then you can build and go. Android, similarly, Eclipse, it's basically Android SDK, and then you can do the same thing. So we were fortunate enough, as of 1.3 that was released in October, of now supporting localization. So before it was, you could still create let's say, a Chinese version, a traditional Chinese version, or a simplified Chinese version of a Kurogo-based mobile web or the native app. But now we can actually support multiple languages. So actually, Korea Telecom made a contribution to do this. And the idea behind this is that now you just have to grab the string tables and just translate the string tables, and voila, you have a new instance of Kurogo in that language. So to sort of illustrate that, here's a version from the administrative panel that you're looking at here, and now that the whole thing is in Korean. So to do that, we did not, all we needed to do is we had to streamline the Kurogo so that we isolated all the strings that actually goes into the administrative interface in this case, as well as some of the ones that are, sort of hidden in the background. So those are now all exposed. And again, if you were to go through the user or the developer guide, it kind of walks you through where things are, and you can create multi-language mobile sites. So supporting different languages, and I think that might be actually useful for a lot of the Asian universities and customers. So the next thing is getting into more of the sort of the building blocks of Kurogo. So we're using essentially modules that I illustrated earlier, with the directory module, or the news module, or it could be a shuttle bus module, or it could be a dining room module, or it could be social module, whatever it is. So in all of these cases, we're essentially using a data controller that connects to different types of backend data. And you're parsing the information that's coming from these different data sources. And then the logic is there to really piece it together. And from there, we're using the templating engine to output the pages to the appropriate types of devices that are out there. Now, so this sounds, it's really straightforward. And actually, if you go into the code, you can actually very quickly see what this actually means. So I would encourage you to do that. But one of the other important things that's always very important for mobile especially is the ability to actually detect the device and to classify the device. So back in 2007, when we embarked on this project, again, back then we had to worry about all the Nokia phones and all these Samsung and LG phones that are, so feature. And then you got all these touchscreen phones, and, it was like all over the place. So we actually looked at a open source project called WURFL. That's WURFL. I think it stands for Wireless Universal Resource Locator or something. Anyway, WURFL, the idea behind that was that they would use the open source community to report properly and correctly all the properties of every single mobile device. So in theory it was good, but in practice it was not as reliable as we had wanted. So that was sort of our version 1 approach. So we said, okay, we know that by using user agent stream, you know that it's an iPhone, or you know that it's whatever. Then we actually get that information. If we don't know what it is, then we give it to WURFL. WURFL gives us back whatever it is, and then we classify it that way. So then we evolved from there to sort of more of a grouping approach. And now this is actually our 3rd iteration, which is, again, we're still using the user agent stream, but we're actually relying on a little bit more intelligent way of recognizing different devices. And if you actually go and open up the source code, you can actually take a look at it. There's a lib-/device data.json file. So that sort of serves as a baseline of how we are identifying and classifying the different devices. And then from there, you can then feed the user agent stream, and then you get different properties. Then we use those properties to basically group them and then provide the templates. We also have an external data detection, device detection service available, and I think, again, at the last count, it was like 2,000 some servers out there using that. So the idea behind this is that this provides us with the basis of then creating the templates. So we have templates that are for the basic phones, templates that are for the what we call the compliant phones, which is more modern devices with the modern browsers. And then still some of the touch ones out there, and then the tablets, and we should probably actually there's a separate one for the desktop as well. And so you can kind of use the templating engine to sort of design the user interface that actually works for that specific one. If you sort of zoom in on the actual template here of compliant. So you have a device like an iPhone, and let's say as an example, a specific type of Verizon Droid in the US, which is a Motorola product, has a certain feature. Then you could actually inherit the root template from the compliant, but then you can do something very specific for that particular platform. So there are different ways of creating a custom templates that's more efficient, essentially. And again, if you sort of go through the code, then this will be a lot easier to, I think, understand and illustrate. But just to further to that, is that if I'm designing something that actually has a search bar, so I have a search.template file that actually works, that's sort of the baseline. But on a regular phone, regular feature phone, I actually have search-basic.template file. So what it's doing is it's actually making this particular UI very relevant to the basic phone. Taking out the search button entirely, because the graphic image there doesn't really fit into the regular feature phone and so forth. And then on the device like a BlackBerry Storm, which is a terrible device by the way, but that was one of their biggest mistakes at the beginning. So anyway, that's a regular touch non-compliant phone. In that case, I'm sorry, that's a compliant phone, but actually it's a BlackBerry, so it's got bugs. So we actually specially make a separate template, not to redo the whole thing, but just to address the specific shortcomings of that thing. So it's essentially customizing it for the specific device. So you have the ability to use just the regular, set of templates. And then if you really needed to, because different countries, different companies, different universities, different whoever, will need to do something custom, then you can take advantage of the templating engine. Okay, so now I'm going to actually then show you, and if you go to the developer guide of Kurogo, you can actually do this yourself. But I'm just going to quickly show you what it's like to write a custom module for using Kurogo. Make sure that this is okay. So before I do that, I guess I should walk you through sort of the directory structure. So if you download the Kurogo either from the Kurogo.org or through GitHub, for the mobile web piece, this is what you get. So you have a sort of a www sort of the site, the directory there. And this is essentially, you don't have to do much with that, but then there are these sites. So we, by default, provide you with the Universitas, that's sort of the example that you can follow along. And inside, you will actually find there's an app folder. So app is essentially modules. So app's got the modules, and it's got also common, commonly used CSS and JavaScript. And I guess I already have a hello in there, so that's the hello world. But you actually have nothing there. So if you download the original version, then you won't actually have hello there. And then there's all these configurations. So some of the things that I showed earlier about how to configure a Kurogo using the web-based admin, you can actually go in and do it through this interface as well, through the program. And then there's the data, and then the logs, and the themes. So for a theme, we're providing so the common CSS here, and you can kind of now see the templates that I was talking about for different kinds of, the different types of devices. So there's a compliant.css, then there's a compliant-blackberry.css, and then compliant-bb plus CSS. So these are some of the things that, depending on the site, you may or may not want to do all these things. And in most cases, you might be able to just do one set of those compliant, and you might be done. But in the example, in the US as an example, BlackBerry users are important. So we do a better job for them than normally we would, probably wouldn't do for another device like Symbian device as an example. But the Symbian was really, really important, and you need to really support that. Then again, you can do something like this for specific Nokia type of devices and so on. So this kind of gives you the ability to actually control the templates. And by default, we actually go to the above the site folder, then you can actually see the app. So these are the default modules that we are providing with Kurogo. In this case, this is 1.3. So it gives you the administrative module, calendar module, what we call the content module. You can copy and paste content and change to something else, and then make lots and lots of different modules there. Customized module, download module, emergency module, and so on and on. And so the map module that you looked at earlier, and there's a whole video module, and you can actually do config. So CSS, JavaScript there, and this is the strings. This is actually part of what you might be able to leverage to translate or actually do a localization. And right now, by default, we're including English, US-based English version, and then additional the templates for different kinds of pages, essentially. So that's basically what you would do. That's sort of a structure of the folders. And if I go to do a hello world, now the example here is available through, let me get rid of that, through our documentation. So the objective here is to write hello world. Like every other software development, I guess hello world comes always first. So let me actually go to the mobile web content. And this is, I'm just going through the documentation so you can actually see that it exists and you can reference that. There we go. So making your first module, hello world. So it talks about the case sensitivity, talks about the creating the module folder structure, and it talks about creating the module class file, the template file, and it kind of explains what it would look like from a folder perspective after you're done. So just quickly to show you what that is. So essentially under the site, Universitas, we created a folder called Hello inside the site, and then in this case, I guess under the config. And then there's the module.ini, and then there's pages.ini. And this is actually created automatically, I believe. And actually, if we go to now the site Universitas, then I think it's the apps, and then under the modules, and then go to the hello. And essentially that's the string that we want to print out, saying hello world. And then you create a template, and in this case just a simple template file for the compliant branch. And this then includes, as you can see, the common /template header.template, and also the footer. And if you need to make any exceptions and that sort of thing, that you can actually play with that as well. And so what you get after you're done with all that, let's see if I can get that, is I was doing this earlier today. No, that's actually the wrong place. I should go and make sure that I have the map set up properly. I didn't have that one set up properly, so I should point to that. So you can, obviously what I'm doing is that on my Mac, I have the Linux, well, the server, Apache server running. And pointing it to that particular folder, and then I can basically use that to develop and debug. And I was actually pointing to a different site, so now I'm going to point to the correct one. And hopefully, now this time, when I reload, okay, so now it's got a hello module, and then it says hello, and the icons are there, because it actually, you can create these icons in different sizes, and then put them up. And so in addition to all the standard modules, now you have your hello module. So we can sort of continue to evolve this, and the interesting part, again, is how the other universities actually have done this. And so you have a lot of different custom modules that's now being available to the community. that connects to different ERP systems, that connects to different learning management solutions, that are connecting to, or like laundry machine tracker. I think University of Iowa, so they were one of the first ones to write this. But in the U.S., in a dormitory, you have to go into laundry. And students, usually, they would go and they would wait until the laundry machine is available. Let's say you have 10 machines and they're all full on a Saturday. Well, instead of doing that, they bring their mobile application or mobile web. Oh, the laundry machine is like empty, so I can go and do it now, that sort of thing. So again, you can write all kinds of creative applications and add to the modules being available. So that's a very sort of quick way of kind of showing you what it looks like for the mobile web setup. Now, on the native side, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually build the iPhone app or an iPad app, as long as you're willing to do the same thing that what we are providing with the template very quickly. Now, we're again working on the hybrid solution that will translate the custom module, like the Hello World, to something like this quickly. But there is some Objective-C that you do need to know something about Objective-C. You have to know, at least have, I don't know, maybe taken an introductory class or gone through the documentation. And then actually it's easy, fairly straightforward, to then change the values of what's in the plist on this thing. There's a host, and then you can point to your whatever .edu or whatever .com server. So from there, then you will take advantage of what the Kurogo middleware is providing through the API.